To celebrate 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I thought I would redecorate a bit. Stealth is a concept every gamer can easily understand. It's baked into so many games at this point that you'd be surprised if you can't at least crouch behind enemies and take them down. The concept of stealth was once fun and exciting, with constant challenges and room for creativity. But not anymore! Now, games are filled with lousy AI and scripted events, and overall, boring gameplay. But there's one game that stands above all else that perfected the stealth formula. And if you can't tell by the title of the video, it's The Last of Us Part 2. You may be surprised that The Last of Us Part 2 can be talked in such a positive light, due to the fact that this game is very controversial. However, The Last of Us Part 2 is like literally my favorite game. But even the name The Last of Us Part 2 can ignite love or hate, and I think that's very powerful. You could be mad at the story, but we're not here to talk about that. So let's talk about the gameplay. But before we can understand how The Last of Us Part 2 has mastered the stealth genre, we first have to talk about its predecessor, The Last of Us Part 1. In the first game, you play as this big, clunky old man who can pack a punch, but just as easily can be hit. Your melee options involves running at enemies head on and just swinging for the fences. This is usually a bad idea because depending on who you're running up on, you can easily just get shot where you stand. But this is where the stealthy option comes in. You can crouch and conveniently be the perfect height to duck under cover. This is usually used to hide away from enemies or get behind cover and reposition yourself. But this is the perfect time to bring up something that makes the overall gameplay really fun and the stealth unlike some other games. Bricks and bottles. Comment below if you're bricked up or bottled it up gang. These are usually scattered around all areas of the game. Sometimes you have to go out your way to find some. Picking it up gives you two options. One, you can throw the object somewhere and it will alert enemies to that location. And two, you can chuck it at enemies to temporarily stun them. Both of these options are viable in their own way, but I'll go more in depth about them when we talk about part 2. You also have the listening ability where you can see any enemies in a specific radius through walls, but this is for whips! I only ever use it once or twice during a fight, but it's pretty balanced due to the fact that you have to crouch to use it, and you can't attack while it's active. So before we move on from this game, let's talk about the AI. And no, not that type of AI, I mean how the enemy behaves. The AI in this game isn't stupid. In most stealth games, the AI follows a specific route and doesn't change it up at all. This can make games borderline predictable and too easy. But in The Last of Us, the AI searches around each corner at different speeds. The way the AI acts is dependent on the situation. You may be familiar with the common joke of, "What was that?" "Oh, it must have been the wind." This is a common trope that The Last of Us aims to avoid. It does this by having the enemies constantly on guard after being suspicious. Usually you're fighting more than one enemy, so if a guy is aware of your presence, they'll alert their companions that something is wrong, making any group now on their toes and out to find you. But in this zombie-infested video game comes these enemies called clickers. These guys are blind as a bat, and like a bat, they use their echolocation to their advantage to find out where you are. These guys really force you to take the game slower, and be more cautious of your surroundings, because if you get too close and you don't have a weapon besides your hands... Now, The Last of Us Part 1's combat is a good 6 out of 10. Joel may pack a punch, but he's overall too clunky and the gameplay is way too mashy. But all of that changes to an easy 10 out of 10 with just a couple new tools. And instead of playing as this old man, you now play as this 5'4" lesbian with a switchblade and a lot of daddy issues. And you can also play as this beefcake, but I'm gonna get to that later because that's a whole different thing. In this game, you are much more nimble. You're able to jump around freely, climb to traverse the terrain, can even dive to dodge enemies, or to get lower to the ground quickly. It's impressive that just adding basic movement options can change the gameplay so drastically. The environment plays much more of a key role to how the gameplay flows, allowing you to easily run away when you're under pressure and hide somewhere else. Or if you want to make a smart play and make noise in one area, you're able to quickly attempt to flank them from behind. Hiding in this game is much easier due to the prone tool. It allows you to hide in plain sight, whether it be under a tall car, tall grass, or you can even be the scary monster under the bed. Commonly in stealth games, you're able to take cover in little hiding holes and can just watch whoever's looking for you walk past you. But in The Last of Us, if the enemy's suspicious enough, they'll start looking for you in the hiding holes and sometimes pull you out of there. You aren't safe anywhere. You're only ever temporarily out of combat to plan your next attack. This is usually the time where you gather resources to cook up bombs or arrows or any other tool you'll need. And depending on who you're playing, you get different types of weapons. So this is the time where I bring up the beefcake. Abby is the girl you're playing for the other half of the game. She comes from a military organization known as the WLF, and it shows with her weapon. Both have similar weapons with different aesthetics and executions. Both of them have pistols, shotguns, explosives, and archery weapons. But then there's big differences like Abby having a flamethrower and Ellie having a silenced submachine gun. All your weapons make a lot of noise and will alert any enemies in the area to your location. But later in both stories, you're able to build a silencer attachment for your handgun. This is actually really smart because you really have no use for a pistol if you have all these other weapons. So your pistol being the only one you can craft a silencer for is perfect use for it. Usually you have about 3 shots before your silencer breaks, so you have to be resourceful and use your shots sparingly. Luckily, for a lot of cases, a shot in the head will kill most common enemies, but there's also exceptions to this rule. The resourceful gameplay is what The Last of Us is known for, and a big contributor to why the combat experience is so unique. In every situation, you'll be forced to handle it differently based on a multitude of different things. How many enemies there are, how many bullets do you have, and do you have enough craftable materials to build a bomb? You're constantly micromanaging everything you have, and with harder difficulties, the fewer resources you'll have. This is when stealth plays such a big role in the gameplay. Let me show you what I mean. This is Seattle, day 2, and it's our first introduction to the group known as the Seraphites, who communicate through whistles. I place a landmine here because I know someone will try to follow me as I advance forward while going prone to hide in the tall grass. I love this section of the game due to the fact that it's filled with tall grass. Called it. I pull out the bow to take out enemy number 2 and number 3. Now, this guy snuck up on me, and yet I easily take the upper hand and take him out. This enemy was strolling on through, so I sneakily followed behind her and put her to Betty bye. Night night, little guy. Lastly, I hear one of the Seraphites do a call that works similar to Marco Polo, and no other Seraphites call back, and now I know this is the last one standing. 1v1. I, however, am not aware of the location of the last one, so I make my way over to this car and break the window, making noise, knowing it will attract the last enemy. And so I run away, waiting for my prey to fall for my bait. This round's pretty much over. I never miss my shot. Crap. Time to improv. You see, first you can try aggressive gameplay and run around trying your best to kill everyone you see. But you can easily leave yourself vulnerable for someone to run up on you and take you out. So now, you have a choice. Continue to take it fast and die while trying, or change up the pace and take it slow. You can decide to start picking them off one by one, slowly dwindling their numbers before you eventually slip up and someone is aware of your location, which forces you to have an all-out brawl. If this game was a movie, it'd be any John Wick movie. John Wick arrives to a location knowing he's clearly outnumbered, so at first he's sneaky, taking on only 1v1s, then he's taking out waves of enemies that are running at him. What makes John Wick so fun to watch is how many different ways he handles these situations. And it's all the same for The Last of Us. It's similar to improv shows. Each enemy sets you up for a challenge and you have to respond with yes. The way The Last of Us solved stealth was allowing the player to play how they want. It's crazy to say, but the stealth is so good because you don't have to play stealthy. All your tools can be used for both aggressive and sneaky playstyles, and it flows based on what you do and what situation you're in. The AI is smart, so it won't always be a piece of cake, but it'll always be a constant challenge that forces you to think creatively if you're outnumbered. The enemy variation is also refreshing, with each enemy bringing something to the table. I'd even talk about the infected stage called the Stalkers, who literally follow you around in the shadows and run at you when you're not looking. This game presents so many ideas that work well together that make you quickly think on your feet. There's a modern problem where stealth in games have become an afterthought rather than an option that could be just as fun as aggressive gameplay. In an age where everything's either fast-paced or slow, The Last of Us is a comfortable middle child that allows you to do either while not being boring. What most teams have considered a feature, The Last of Us has made it into a borderline John Wick simulator. But if there's any takeaway of this video, we need a John Wick game that's just The Last of Us combat. I think that would work really well. And Naughty Dog knew to cancel The Last of Us multiplayer, because if I had my hands on that game, I would have gone pro. I would have been in the big leagues, baby.